Right about now, allow me to introduce you to a different conversation. And right now, I am joined by Engineer Shama Kiteme, who is the president of the Institution of Engineers of Kenya. And our conversation this morning is on matters engineering, and we are looking at ways on shaping solutions for Kenya's infrastructure and the industrial future in general. And what better way to have this conversation other than have the president of the Institution of Engineers of Kenya with us right here in studio. So welcome, Engineer Shama. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's get into the conversation for this morning, whereby we're looking at ways in shaping the solutions for Kenya's infrastructure and in the industrial future. Just to have a blanket, view on what role the engineers have in all of this. What would you say is the role of engineers in this?
Very important. Thank you very much for the question, V. Engineers are the center of virtually everything when you talk about infrastructure.
Yeah. When
you talk about roads, when you talk about water and sanitation, when you talk about aviation sector, when you talk about the blue economy, when you talk about infrastructure, generally engineers are at the center of this.
Yeah.
They design, they plan, they actually conceive, they plan, they design, they implement, they maintain, and when necessary, they bring it down. And therefore, engineers are basically actually trained to spearhead this kind of infrastructure in all sectors. And our engineers are all over the place. Our membership of 13,000, they are all over the place involved in this kind of engagement. But more importantly, we do know the work of infrastructure. And every time we provide enabling infrastructure, we also contribute positively towards industrialization now.
Yes.
No economy anywhere in the world that has not been transformed significantly by serious investment in infrastructure, in industrialization.
Yeah.
Now, doing industries creates more opportunities because every country that needs to be serious in terms of economic transformation, we must build industries, we must invest in production, we must stop exporting raw materials. When you talk about agriculture, we must not only produce, but we must do agro-processing, because when you do that, then you add value, or you do what we call value addition in the sense that then you are able to export finished products and not raw material. And this cuts across. Even in mining, you don't want just to be selling raw materials. And we've seen this in Africa. We want to be a base for extraction of raw materials and raw minerals, but the value addition where we do the processing is where the money is, and we must target that. And that is the role of engineering. Engineers in spearheading infrastructure development, but also crucially industrialization.
Yeah, so clearly engineers are truly the backbone of industrialization, if we put it that way. Now, IEK led a peaceful march back in August of this year, and it was the employment for 10,000 engineers,
correct.
Right? And you also got the opportunity to present a petition to government. Tell me a bit about that. What did the petition call for?
Thank you very much, V, for highlighting this. It is true, on 27th August this year, His Excellency the President set the day to be Katiba Day. And engineers decided that the best way to celebrate this, to celebrate freedoms, rights, and the constitutional provision that allow us to, picket and present petitions to public authorities. We celebrated that day by having a peaceful march from our offices in Kindaruma Road, and went all the way to Nyayo House. We petitioned the country's leadership, and particularly His Excellency the President, to create 10,000 job opportunities for engineers. And we presented a very strong case. Yeah. This case was the fact that we have looked around and we have seen that in this country there's a tendency to prefer foreign firms to give them opportunities, making Kenyan engineers spectators in their own country as infrastructure is being implemented. And when we looked around, we did our math right, and we realized that if you go to the road sector alone and make sure that every resident engineer is responsible for one project, as opposed to the current situation where we have a resident engineer responsible for 11 projects, we're actually going to create 1,500 good jobs for engineers, Kenyan engineers. We looked at the housing sector, and the affordable housing program is really taken shape. And we, prior to the start of the program, we had agreed with the State Department of Housing and Urban Development that every consortium that is going to be brought on board, they will be allocated at least 3 projects. Someone mischievously in the State Department of Housing and Urban Development went ahead to allocate a single consortium as many as 8 projects. And we are saying, if you allocate each consortium just about 3 projects, you're going to create more opportunities for engineers, and you're going to create not less than 4,000 good jobs for Kenyan engineers. We went into the energy sector, and we appreciated His Excellency the President for cancelling the Adani deals. And he said, look, if you want to install power lines, pylons, and pulling power cables, this is something that can be done by Kenyan engineers. And if you give Kenyan engineers opportunities to do this work, you're going to create 2,000 good jobs for Kenyan engineers. We went to the agriculture sector, aviation sector. We know we need to expand JKIA. And we need to build 2 additional mega big airports in this country. Because we know Saudi Arabia is constructing an aerotropolis with 6 runways. This country needs to expand JKIA. And he said, if you give these jobs to Kenyan engineers, you're going to create at least 500 jobs. In agriculture sector, in blue economy, you know, if you give Kenyan engineers opportunity to implement the dams, etc., and irrigation opportunities that we need to invest in so that we can assure this country food security, you're going to create 1,000 good jobs for Kenyan engineers. So we said, look, Your Excellency, we have done our maths, we have looked at all the sectors, and we know you can create 10,000 good jobs. Now, in the register of engineers in this country, we have over 27,000 engineers. Sadly, 50% of those are unemployed. And we said, when you create these 10,000 jobs opportunities for Kenyan engineers, and we know it is possible because we have numbers and we have done our math, then you enable the space for industrialization, you build industries, you're going to create the additional 3,500 jobs for engineers. This country has enough work for engineers because we are literally a construction site from Mandera to Nyamira, from Lamu to Lokichar. We are a construction site. But then there is this bad practice where the state agencies are preferring foreign firms to give them work as opposed to Kenyan firms, which is against the law. Because the law in Public Procurement Disposal Act states categorically, and the procurement regulations, that every public tenders, you should prefer local firms. And local firms are qualified by law to be those owned by Kenyans, 55%, 51% stake, or citizen firms. Now, in instances where we don't have the local capacity and you give to foreign firms, the law requires that at least 75% of those employed in those firms, they must be Kenyans. And 20% of senior management in those firms must be Kenyans. So the law is very categorical. The law goes further and says that Public Procurement Regulatory Authority should ensure compliance with these provisions of the law by checking, getting the data, collecting, and filing a report with Parliament every 6 months. So that if we comply with the law as provided, we are going to create opportunities for Kenyan engineers. We will not have a Kenyan engineer who is unemployed. So our march was to present facts and figures. And we are very grateful, and I want to thank the Executive Office of the President, because the head of public service took very serious our petition, and he wrote a letter to the Cabinet Secretary for Labor and told him the issues that we raised are serious. They need to be looked at urgently. And we are saying, as Institution of Engineers of Kenya, we are available for the conversation to realize this, because We are Kenyans, we are patriotic, we are very willing to be part of the development of the infrastructure of this country. But the current situation whereby Kenyan engineers are spectators on infrastructure being done in this country is not sustainable. It is not good for this country.
Yeah, and speaking about that, you know, you have categorically put it that you did the math. You as an institution have done the math, you have the numbers, and you are showing us that it is possible for 10,000 engineers to get jobs. What I'm getting for you is that we do not have a shortage of engineers in Kenya, because sometimes it looks like maybe there's a shortage of engineers in Kenya. That's why we are having foreign firms coming in to take the lead. So you're putting it clearly that we do not have a shortage of engineers in Kenya. And, you know, maybe just the fact that, you know, we are having more projects being spearheaded by foreign firms. Maybe why is this the case? And you're saying that the policies are already there. So is it that they are not being implemented, and what can be done to ensure that these things are being implemented so that our Kenyan engineers can also get that opportunity to take the lead, because they are well trained, they should take the lead?
Thank you very much, Fee. That's a very good question. I'll tell you why. This country does not lack engineering professionals. It does not. We have said we have an unemployment rate among engineers of over 50%. The situation we have currently is whereby, especially in those interventions that are foreign funded, there are agreements and covenants that are done that then lock out Kenyan engineers and local citizens. And this then encourages the entire market then to prefer foreign expertise. Situations like we have in the sugar belt and sugar sector, in the very many sugar farms we have, especially in the Western Kenya, we do have technologists, technicians and artisans who are foreigners. And we have done our math, over 1,000 of them, doing work that Kenyans can do. We have interventions, and I'll talk just nearby here, Talanta Stadium, where we have foreign farms. We have plumbers, electricians who are imported from outside the country. Now, this country has electricians, it has plumbers, it has machine operators. Why do we deliberately craft covenants and instruments that exclude Kenyans in the work that they are capable of doing? So we're saying we don't lack the workforce. We don't lack the skill sets. We have resources here. But somehow, decisions by decision makers favors non-Kenyans to be able to be involved in this project. And we say this is not sustainable for two reasons. Number one, it is not right to make Kenyans spectators when in the infrastructure being done in their country, when they have the capacity. Number two, this infrastructure, once done, it needs to be maintained. It needs, you know, regular repairs and stuff like that. When you do not have local know-how and knowledge and understanding of the infrastructure, who is going to do that? Will we perennially depend on foreign expertise? We're saying this is not sustainable. And we know it is a couple of decisions that needs to be made, and we do things right. And we correct this anomaly, because then we are setting ourselves to a situation whereby will perennially be dependent on foreign expertise, and no country that has developed without investing in its own people, in developing its own local capacity. And we are saying, look, we are not hostile to foreign expertise and all that working in our countries, because we work in other countries. But look, the law is clear. And even when we do not have the local capacity, the law stipulates that when you engage the foreign experts and firms, they must train the local and Kenyan engineers and workforce. They must pass on skills through mentorship, through technologies transfer and skills transfer. So the law is very clear. We just need enforcement. And I can tell you for sure, we have enough skilled, trained, experienced, knowledgeable engineers, technologists, technicians and artisans to be able to run the infrastructure development in this country.
Are there maybe specific reforms that the government, you feel the government should commit to?
Critically, we have said and been very loud that every time we are working around these finance agreements for infrastructure and all that, and especially when we have funding from development agencies. Please involve us as engineers. Let us give our technical input. It is not fair to have Treasury and other agencies to run these efforts. There is no inclusion of technical people who then understand the technical aspects and make the right decisions that safeguard the interests of this country. We want to believe that there are good intentions out there. We want to believe that the infrastructure development is necessary. What we need is to make sure that we look internally and capitalize on the local resources that we have. And this is possible. We have fantastic laws. We just need implementation and need to be a little bit more patriotic. And I'll give you an illustration, for example, of affordable housing. We actually got into this conversation in the State Department of Housing and Urban Development and said that you need to involve architects, quantity surveyors, and engineers, Kenyan engineers, in these projects. And you need to compensate them well and fairly. Now, there's a situation where the current compensation is not attainable, and I want to thank His Excellency the President that we reminded him, particularly on 15th July this year, that engineers, architects, and quantity surveyors involved in this project need to be compensated to statutory levels. So the statutes are there, but someone is mischievously hell-bent on not complying with them.
You know, when we talk about Kenyan engineers being sidelined and remaining sidelined for a while now, what repercussions does this, have, even when we look at, the students or the younger people who are looking to become engineers in the future, the ones who are already in our universities and get to hear of such conversations that we are having right now? Is there a repercussion to it?
One, there's a huge demoralization that happened. We are very deliberate in mentoring university students and showing them that there is hope. But when you create infrastructure and exclude Kenyans from implementation of this infrastructure, then you are demoralizing them. Two, you are depriving this country human resources for the years to come. And we are saying, for you to develop the local capacity, know-how, and the knowledge, engineers in this country needs to be involved in this infrastructure. And they understand when and where you need to be involved in servicing, in maintenance, and stuff like that. Three, you actually make this country not develop its own technical standards and, engineering codes that we need to develop. And we're saying we cannot be over-reliant on foreign standards and stuff like that. We need to be able to develop our own standards. And we have Standards Act. We should be able to develop our own standards. We cannot run away from the need to benchmark with what is happening across the globe, because the country has become, the globe has become a village. However, we say we must be patriotic, we must be deliberate in developing our own standards, indigenous ways of doing our stuff, because then we are able to develop as a country, and we are able to bequeath successive generations sufficient knowledge, backup, and know-how to be able to run the infrastructure that we come up with.
Yeah. Now there is push towards sustainable industrialization and resilient infrastructure, and this is also something that is under the 2030 Vision 2030, and it's also in the bottom-up economic transformation agenda in Kenya. We're only 5 years away from vision from 2030, which is the Vision 2030. How far are we how far are we in terms of us getting to this point where, the push for industrialization and resilient infrastructure, that is sustainable industrialization?
I think sustainable industrialization is a brilliant word to use in this conversation, because not only do we need to develop industries, we need to make sure that we are sustainable in everything that we touch. Why? Because our responsibility to successive generation is such that we should not compromise our world today so that they do not have a world to be proud of. Now, we do know we have a Vision 2030, a very brilliant idea that the government in around 2002 came up with, Kibaki government and all that. This country needs long-term planning. in the next 37 or 38 years, we'll be 100 years as a country post-independence. The question is, where will we be? Will we be a limping country that has wasted 100 years of independence and not transformed ourselves? We know a country like China's pulled millions and millions of its citizens from poverty in a few 30 years because they have had long-term planning. What will this country be in the next 37, 38 years? What will we be proud of as a country, saying we are now 100 years? Sustainable industrialization is necessary. Sadly, we had about 2015, the contribution of GDP was close to 10%, the role of industrialization contribution to GDP. However, as we speak today, it has dipped to 7.6%. That tells you the goal we had for achieving about 20% by 2030, the contribution of industrialization to our GDP, may not be realized. Now, that does not tell you that it is impossible. What it tells you is that we need to look a little more into this space and see what we can do in terms of incentivizing, whether we are talking about moving into e-mobility, electric vehicles and all that, which we are saying engineers are capable, ready, and trained, experienced to be able to move into this space. I was in Uganda the other day, and they are manufacturing electrical vehicles in Jinja. And the country, through the Office of the President, has established a ministry they are calling Science, Technology, Innovation. And they are very deliberate about growing the local manufacturing because we're saying we must do value addition. And so we must be deliberate all the way. The policymakers must be deliberate on investing in sustainable industrialization. We must be deliberate that all the minerals that we are extracting, and we have this potential to make sure the contribution of mining in this country, for example, is about 10% of GDP or more. Right now, it is in infinite small, almost not recognizable. So we must be deliberate about sustainable industrialization and making sure that we look long-term on what is going to transform this country. Because when we invest in industries, we're creating more opportunities for engineers, mechatronic engineers, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers. And I can tell you, V, for sure, every country that has developed, whether it is China, whether it is Singapore, whether it is South Korea, they have been deliberate in building local manufacturing industries. Today, as we speak, the United States has adopted very protectionist policies as a government because they're saying we need to stop exporting job opportunities of our citizens. They are putting in tariffs and whatnot to encourage local manufacturing and making sure that what is produced then can be exported. So V, what you are saying generally is that we must be deliberate to invest in sustainable industrialization for this country to be able to pull itself from poverty and pull millions of its citizens from poverty and to be a fully developing and developed country.
All right, as we almost come to a conclusion of this conversation, we are aware that the COMESA Summit is currently happening in the country, and one of the things that they are looking into is ways to enhance the intra-COMESA trade. Trying to just put it in this place where of the conversation we are having, maybe how can IEK foster stronger regional collaborations, within East Africa and within the member states of COMESA as well on matters, cross-border infrastructure.
Thank you, V. Just yesterday, I was involved in a public discourse involving engineer colleagues from South Africa, Ghana, Nigeria, Uganda. We had colleagues from, of course, Kenya, and we were having a conversation. Last 2 weeks, we were in Uganda in what we call Africa Engineering Week. So engineers in Africa have come together under a platform we call Federation of African Engineering Organizations. And we are sharing knowledge. We are exchanging ideas. Yesterday, I was chatting with colleagues in Zambia, advocating for the same issues we are doing here in Kenya. They were presenting their petition to the National Assembly on the same issue, saying give 50% of maintenance opportunities of war infrastructure to Zambian engineers. So we are saying we have forged a collaboration effort. Our friends in Tanzania. And I have been privileged to carry out consultancy assignments in Djibouti, Ethiopia, Burundi. So we have built this common platform of African engineers. We share opportunities, and COMESA is a fantastic opportunity. We know, and every year I'm in Zambia, every time I'm in Ghana, I'm in Sierra Leone, we can see infrastructure happening. But the common denominator we have is that this infrastructure is being carried by foreign firms. We are saying, give African engineers opportunities to develop their continent. Whether it's from Cape or from Cairo to Cape Town, whether it is from Niamey to Mombasa, we need to give opportunities to African engineers, because an employment rate for African engineers is big. And COMESA is a great platform. We have mutual recognition agreements between East African countries, where a Kenyan can go and work in Tanzania, can go to work in Rwanda. And that's why I'm saying I have consulted in East African countries. So through COMESA, we need to make sure that we build these family of engineers in developing cross-border infrastructure. And we have agreements in power, we have agreements in railways and stuff like that. We have trans-African and continental infrastructure agreements on airports, railways and roads and stuff like that. So we need to continue encouraging inter-African trade through African Continental Free Trade Area. And COMESA is a very key contributor to this debate and conversation, and we should be very proud we are hosting this conversation right here in Nairobi this week.
All right. My final question to you, the certification of engineers in Kenya, does it align with the global engineering standards?
Well, a good question. In June, we were in Mexico City, Yucatan, and Kenya acceded to what we call Washington Accord. And this effort has been spearheaded by Engineers Board of Kenya, where I sit as a board member. And so as we speak today, engineers trained in this country, their skills can be recognized anywhere in the world. Because Washington Accord brings heavy industrialized nations like US, Russia, South Korea, Australia, UK, and so we should be very proud that this country, engineers trained in this country, their skills and expertise, they are recognized all over the world. And therefore, we have a process whereby you comply with international standards by submitting yourself to the registration process that we have locally through Engineers Board of Kenya. You are trained as an engineer, and when you are trained for 5 years, you are expected to have acquired what we call graduate attributes when you graduate. Then you go through a 3-year training minimum by statutes requirement, where you acquire what you call initial professional development. Then you submit your training and experience report and a project that you have done as an engineer. Then you're examined by peers through Engineers Board of Kenya. And when you pass professional interview examination, then you get registered as a professional engineer. The beauty of our recognition internationally through Washington Accord is that now we can have international mobility of engineers. That if I'm registered in Kenya, I can go to work in Russia, I can go to work in the US, I can go to work in the UK, and my credentials are internationally recognized. So we are not working as a silo, we are able to work across the globe, because I can tell you I've been involved in bringing together engineers in the US and Canada, and we have engineers from trained in this country working in the best platforms all over the world. Boeing, Lockheed Martin, they're working for GE. We have engineers working in Germany, Siemens, the UK, Spain, all over the place. We have Kenyan engineers because they are very qualified, they're knowledgeable, they're experienced, and we have very bright engineers trained in this country.
All right. The final one, I know I mentioned the other one as the final one. Now this is the actual final one. What is the wider vision of IEK on matters Kenya's infrastructure?
Very good. Now, IEK, our role, we look at welfare of engineers and we work towards advocacy. And we also equip our engineers through capacity building. We have developed enough instruments, the standards of practice. Just the other day, we worked with the National Construction Authority and Council of Governors, COG, to develop site inspection manual. We have been involved in the development of the building code, in the development of the, adoption of structural Eurocodes. So as an institution of engineers of Kenya, we are playing an active role in making sure that the infrastructure developed in this country meets local and international standards. We are training our engineers and equipping them, and we are proactively engaging with policymakers and telling them we need to develop infrastructure that meets standard. We need to look at road safety. We need to make sure that buildings and all the infrastructure that we develop is safe, it does not collapse. And that's why we are developing, we developed the site inspection handbook recently, and we have been involved in training and equipping our members with capacity building initiatives that expose them to the best global standards. And we bring very experienced trainers to be able to equip our engineers and pass on skills, so that as we are involved in the development of our infrastructure, we have world-class infrastructure developed in this country.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us for this conversation. Thank you for shedding light on all matters engineering and local engineering. And the thing that has really come out is the fact that we need our engineers to take center stage in the projects taking place in the country. That was Engineer Shama Kiteme, who is the president of the Institution of Engineers of Kenya. And this is where we end this conversation. Thank you so very much for staying tuned.